The new Prismatic evolution set that has all these beautiful and sought after evolutions is cool and all, but don't let it distract you from the real chase card. This set will bring us a brand new baby Pokemon, which has the potential to change the Pokemon TCG as we know it, as its attack promises to slow things down from the super aggressive format we find ourselves in right now and completely change how decks are built in the future. That's right, I'm talking about this cute little baby Budew that might look innocent, but don't let its looks deceive you. Budew has only ever had 2 prior appearances in the Pokemon TCG, its first in 2007 in the original Diamond and Pearl set, and then in 2008 in the Stormfront set. However, it was never even remotely competitive or playable in Standard, not even as a way to evolve into Roselia because of the weird baby Pokemon evolution mechanics. However, Budew is finally back, and you're about to hear endless, and I do mean endless complaints about how it's so unfair and broken and it should be banned. Its itchy pollen attack reads, during your opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards from their hand. That sentence alone will send shivers down players' spines, as they realize most decks right now are playing almost 25 or even 30 item cards, especially with Pokestop in many of them. The possibility of stopping your opponent from playing item cards is already available in the standard format with Shoppet's Enveloping Shadow and Banetti X's Everlasting Darkness. However, it requires either a coin flip or evolving and a Psychic Energy, too, which is why most players are not bothered by it existing. However, Budew doesn't have any of those requirements. Its attack costs 0 energy, and thus it can attack at any moment, anytime, anywhere, and can be included in any deck, which is exactly what we are seeing in Japan. Budew is being splashed into every deck, and this makes any deck that hasn't properly adapted will become clunky and awkward to use. Don't forget that you can watch videos 24 hours earlier if you become a channel member by following the link in the description below. This kind of support helps me continue to create content like this, so please consider becoming a channel member if you enjoy the content. Just think about the top deck right now, Regidrago V-Star, and it's 4 Nest Balls, 4 Ultra Balls, 4 Earthen Vessels, and 4 Energy Switch. That's 16 useless cards right there once under Budew's item lock. And unless you've been living under a rock, you know how crucial those cards are, especially Energy Switch, to be ready to attack with Regidrago V-Star in turn 2 with its multiple attacks at its disposal. Now of course, you can't win by just attacking forever with Itchy Pollen, as 10 damage isn't threatening, and Budew has a very fragile 30 HP only. However, it will give a player enough time to set up behind it, so that by the time they free you from the item lock, they might already be too far ahead. We have seen this sort of attack be extremely powerful in the TCG, back when Seismitoad EX was a dominant force in the metagame back in 2014 and 2016. And although many aspects of the game were very different back then, item lock has almost always been an amazingly powerful strategy in the Pokemon TCG, with other powerful cards being very dominant, such as Vileplume from Ancient Origins. Both of these item locks were permanent throughout a game, but Budew isn't quite that strong. However, its existence will have a ripple effect in the game, where most decks will need to adapt just because the card exists and is so splashable. And this adaptation will lead to less item reliant versions of decks and an overall slowing down of the format, which in turn will allow other more setup based decks to thrive. Now you might be thinking, come on tablemon, it can't be that bad, can it? Won't the game just be slowed down by a little bit whilst you deal with the Budew? Well, don't take my word for it. All we need to do is take a look over at Japan, where the card has been legal for play for over a month, including a 5,000 player major tournament, the Osaka Champions League, which has won by a Charlodon EX out of all things, defeating Ancient Box in the finals. When the City Leagues, the Japanese equivalent to League Cups, started, Budew was featured in about 50% of the decks placing top 16 or higher, and while out of the top 16 decks of the Osaka Champions League, only 5 of them featured Budew, the variety of decks as well as their builds showcases exactly what will happen to the format once this card becomes legal for play for the first time at the Merida Regional Championship in Mexico. The first adaptation that I think we will see is we will go from a format where most players choose to go first to be the first aggressors into one where you will choose to go second. That way, you have the option to have a first turn with both items and supporters, as well as the first to potentially attack with Budew and lock down an opponent's item cards. This gives you the best chance at establishing a powerful board on your first turn, and also to prevent your opponent from locking you down with Budew as well. Of course, there might be exceptions to this as usual, and going first or second can be down to the matchup you're up against. But if you're sitting across someone and you don't know what deck they're playing, or if they have or don't have Budew in their deck, the safest choice is to pick second. The next adaptation I think we will see is of course a shift to a lower use of item cards in some decks and higher counts of setup tools and supporters. Technical Machine Evolution and higher stage 1 counts in many decks is something that will likely be utilized as a way to set up under item lock, while supporters like Lance, Crispin or even Lana's 8 become more appealing compared to their item cards' counterparts. We will also likely see an increase in use of powerful non-item A-specs such as Grand Tree or Sparkling Crystal. The first two decks that seem to thrive and take advantage of Budew are Dragapult EX and Gardevoir EX. Both of these share many traits, the first one being they're slow to set up and have a very powerful stage 1 Pokemon, so they weren't very focused on rare candy anyways. This, however, usually made them slower than the other powerful stage 2 deck, Charizard, and they would also succumb to the early pressure of Regidrago V-Star. However, now with Budew denying both rare candy and energy switch from those decks amongst other powerful items, they can more easily set up and keep pace. The next two decks that stand out in a format less reliant on item cards are Charizard EX and Ceruledge EX. Charizard EX, the eventual champion of the only major tournament so far with Budew being legal, stands out as a slow but steady wins the race sort of deck that thrives against decks that can't easily one KO it thanks to the combo of Professor Turo Scenario or Scoop Up Cyclone and its Assemble Alloy ability allowing to repower itself up quite easily over and over. Ceruledge, on the other hand, just needs to keep using Professor's research to discard excess energy and establish more Ceruledge EX on the way to doing so. Whilst Ultra Ball is nice to help it establish more Ceruledge EX and Earthen Vessel to discard more energy, it doesn't mind going a bit slower if everyone is as well. And it also has type advantage against any Charizard EX or Dialga V-Star on the bench without the Metal Defender effect removing their weakness, and eventually with enough energy in the discard, it can just 1KO Charizard EX anyways. Lugia V-Star is another deck that not only doesn't mind the item lock too much thanks to a combination of Jet Energy and the Read the Wind attack, as well as Jack to find the necessary Archeops or Lugia V-Star. If your opponent is just using Itchy Pollen over and over, it likely gives you enough time to get set up anyways and then amp you very much the poor thing. Other decks like Miraidon EX or Ancient Box are stable enough with a single turn of item cards and can deal with Budew quickly enough to where they don't mind being under that one turn of item lock, especially if they go second and can threaten aggression right off the bat. And finally, a great example of the adaptations that decks have to make is Charizard EX. The deck still made it all the way to the top 16 of the Osaka Champions League, but with a very different list than we are used to seeing. The list featured 2 Pidgeotto and 2 Charmeleon, as well as a copy of Grand Tree and 3 rare candy instead of the usual 4. These might not seem like major changes to you, but having to rely less on rare candy and having to give up on first stamp as your ace pick in exchange for Grand Tree is impactful enough to where Charizard is a tad bit slower, and this in turn gives other decks the possibility to thrive. And many of you will be happy that Regidrago didn't feature in the top 16 of the tournament, and it also hasn't featured too prominently at the local level in the Japanese Seedle Leagues, so don't take my word for it, but Regidrago's grip on the format might be coming to a halt sooner than you thought was possible. Honestly, Budew reminds me of Trashel and Garbodor. For those of you who weren't playing back then, this card released and it completely changed which decks were viable at the time and how they were built from the ground up, and also punished greedy play as all of us meticulously counted how many item cards our opponents had used during each turn. Will Budew have the same impact as Trashel and Garbodor? The initial reactions and decks that are doing well points to a solid maybe, so I guess we will have to see what happens in Merida, Puerto Rico and EOAC to really know if Budew is all hype or if the game as we know it will change enough. Either way, it is clear all of us will need to respect and adapt to this little seed and its Itchy Pollen attack, and I'm excited to see what will happen at all these major tournaments. As always, thanks for watching and hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts on Budew in the comments section down below, and look forward to an updated tier list video with my predictions on the Budew effect. Until next time. If you want to support the channel, you can use code tablemon to get 5% off at Potent Store for your online codes, 10% off for your sealed product at Flipside Gaming, and 10% off on your aluminum accessories at TC Evolutions. Or if you're looking to buy singles or sleeves, you can fill up your cart and close the tab, then click on the affiliate link in the description and check out. That way you can support the channel over at TCG Player, Card Market, and Dragon Shield. ¿Eres de México y necesitas cartas de Pokémon? Busca Hyperbeam Cards en Facebook e Instagram. Y si estás en Tijuana, búscalos en el local C27 en el Centro Comercial Otay.